Welcome to How to Sell More. Today we're talking about unhinged marketing, so you can enhance your brand's reputation and reach without having to sacrifice authenticity or risk your brand's reputation. I'm Mark Drager. Let's get into it. Okay, so the obvious question is, what is unhinged marketing? It's had this recent trend amongst digital marketers where brands like to step away from the traditional and polished and super professional image and adopt, let's call it a more chaotic, spontaneous, even some might say messy approach to their content. And so this style of marketing really involves content that appears bizarre or humorous or even completely out of character for a big company. And it's designed that way to make it feel authentic and relatable and memorable. Of course, I'm talking mainly about Twitter, mainly about social media, but we've heard of the companies like Wendy's, who on Twitter used to make all kinds of inappropriate comments. We're talking about Duolingo. We're talking about all of these brands who, for some reason, step out of their normal approach, their normal culture, the normal things that they do. And as soon as they get on social media, they're like, we have to act like a 23-year-old, and we have to be snarky, and we have to be sexist, and we have to have sometimes some bro culture worked in there because it's all an effort to feel cool. I didn't know up until recently that was called unhinged marketing, but it's called that way because some of these brands are completely going over the line and completely bananas in their approach. And so I just want to break down really for you the 4 key pillars and strategies to unhinged marketing. Maybe you don't want to go as far as some of these brands I just mentioned. Maybe it doesn't apply to you. Maybe you're afraid you're going to offend everyone. But there are still some things that we can learn from digging into this. We can discuss what can go wrong. We can discuss the risks and the costs, but also there can be some huge benefits and some huge upsides to this. So maybe this is something that you want to work into your marketing and sales mix, being more authentic, being more out there, embracing humor, being controversial, willing to stand out. We're going to get into all of that and a lot more. First of all, the main principle is that with unhinged marketing, it often involves jumping on a popular trend, a popular meme, a joke, some kind of topic, something that's going on out in the world. And it makes the brands, these large corporate brands, really feel more human, especially amongst Gen Z and younger millennials, because it makes it feel like the brand is part of the joke. They're in on the culture. They're in on the buzz. There are a few companies that seem to have really nailed this approach, and then there's a whole bunch of people who've done it wrong. And as an outsider, I can kind of laugh, but as someone who has, over 15 years of experience in corporate marketing and brand strategy and other things, I just know how painful some of these conversations are when things go wrong. So I also have a little sympathy for the people who cross the line. And, you could be a marketing manager or a brand manager, you could be a business owner, and some 21-year-old with no experience who thinks that they understand how the internet works could just destroy your entire brand. I don't know if I should be laughing at that, but part of me finds that a little funny when senior people just go like, hey, young people know the internet. Let's put them in charge of our entire reputation. And so if we dig into this unhinged marketing, there are 4 pillars and 4 key strategies to making this work. So pillar number 1 will be authenticity. This whole approach thrives on being genuine. And so the idea is that as a brand, as a company, you need to be able to show that you're real, that you're unfiltered. And that's a huge part of it. Often with, especially the bigger the company or the more conservative the space, we kind of save our direct conversations for the boardroom table or the pitch or the coffee or the Zoom meeting or the one-on-one. And we have these really direct conversations with our prospects or our vendors or the people in our ecosystem. And then as soon as it comes to the written word, as soon as it comes to something that's a post, that's a blog post, that's on social media, that's a video, that's an advertisement, for some reason we scrub all form of being real and being unfiltered. And we just get super, super vanilla. We get super safe. And there's really, frankly, no reason to pay attention to that. And so the first thing that you may want to consider if you want to bring more of these things into your marketing mix, into your sales and lead generation mix and your brand strategy, again, you may not want to go as far as unhinged marketing, but being more authentic is something we can all do. The brands that embrace this, they show they're real, they are unfiltered, They allow their customers and their prospects to connect with them on a personal level because it's not about being polished. It's really about being as relatable and honest as possible, saying what everyone is thinking, but everyone is too afraid to say. Number 2, adaptability. Brands need to keep up with a really fast-paced trend and meme where trends are changing day to day. And if we're talking about Twitter, which is now X, if we're talking about Instagram with what's popping or TikTok, even LinkedIn, and if we're talking about secondary areas like Reddit, where each day, and sometimes multiple times per day, and depending on the geography you're in, what is trending can change, and it can come and it can go really, really quick. Now, the number one benefit to this approach is it simply gets companies, it gets brands, it gets marketing teams thinking about how fast can we respond to something. If something will be popping as a trend for 2 or 3 days and then disappear, if you can't respond within 2 or 3 days, then you miss the opportunity. And so often with this real unfiltered approach, it goes hand in hand with being able to respond almost in real time to things as they're happening. Because if you can be at the forefront of that little peak, that 1 or 2 day rise and fall and trend, and you can start to pick up some awareness and grow your audience from that, it's a really small win. But if we think about the way that the ocean's waves might erode the stones on a beach, it's not a single wave that's doing that work, right? It's wave after wave as the tide comes in and goes out day after day, month after month, year after year, that chips away at it. And so this adaptability and being able to jump on a trend right away is really important, but it's something that you develop, and it's a pace, it's a mindset, and it's a skill you develop. And then you can see these win after win after win. And the other great thing is with moving this quickly, it's light enough to throw up and it's light enough to throw away. Often with big, slow, complicated, highly polished campaigns or activities that we're doing, we put so much time, we put so much money into it. There's almost a sunken cost syndrome. It's almost like, well, we know it's not good. We know it's not working. But it took us weeks. It took us months. It took us a year to get to this point. And it's just too big and too complicated and too expensive to fix or to throw away. But with Unhinged Marketing, the whole idea is because you're responding in almost real time, it's light enough that you throw something up, and then it's light enough that if it doesn't work, or you want to delete it, or you want to pull it down, or it disappears because things are moving so quickly, it's not a big deal. Now let's move to pillar number 3, creativity and surprise. Depending on your personality, depending on your team, you may like this more or you may like this less. If you come from an ops background, a finance background, if you are the type of leader who's really focused on systems, this may not be something you love. But for some of us, we love this creativity. Unhinged Marketing is all about breaking the mold. And so when you approach this, it forces you to almost be as innovative and daring and willing to surprise the audience as possible. And so you can do this by connecting unexpected images like memes and like GIFs, or you can do off-the-wall humor, or you can be slightly sarcastic, or you can just post completely bananas random content. As long as there's a kind of a connection or a point, that is okay, because it's more about the attention, it's more about the awareness, the engagement. It's more about how you say things than what you say. And so the aim is to grab attention, create memorable interactions, and just get people to start recognizing you, because attention is the new currency. I mean, it has been for a time, but now we have the power to actually capture that. And Unhinged Marketing, whether you choose to go all the way and embrace this, or whether you choose to learn from some of these pillars, creativity and surprise is something we can all work into our marketing mix. And number 4, engagement. Listen, how many times do you want to build a community? Do you want to launch something? Do you wish you had more likes, more views, more comments? Maybe you're running a podcast like I have 2 podcasts, and I throw question of the week out there and the audience doesn't respond. It comes back with crickets. Engagement can be really, really challenging, because if you are a perfectionist, if you are used to engagement hopefully being all positive, the more you put yourself out there, the more negative engagement you're going to get. But with this type of marketing and this type of approach, engagement is engagement is engagement. All engagement is good engagement, because it helps with the algorithms, it helps with the platforms, it helps put you out there more and more. And if you really are embracing this unfiltered approach, when someone comes swinging at you, you go swinging back. Or you provide more context and kind of correct the record. And while everyone else is looking at this thing, someone came swinging at you, the way you respond shows the other people whether you're reasonable or not, whether you're smart or not, whether you're good or not. And if you do this right, you actually, from a reputation management point of view, you end up making the other person look like a bit of an idiot. So engagement is really what this is about, and it is a two-way street. It's not enough just to post wild content. Brands also need to be engaging with their audience. You need to be engaging with your audience. And so if you love social, you're like, this is not a big deal. I'm already on social all the time. My team's on social. I'm on it. But maybe you're like me. I spend a lot of time looking at social, but I'm not like a commenter. I'm actually an introvert. And I go to these mastermind groups and sometimes I don't talk at all. And I go to networking sessions and I don't really want to meet anyone. And I hear these great stories and I feel like that's amazing, but I don't really have anything to add to the conversation. I'm not sure that my point of view actually adds anything to the conversation. And so if I'm on Instagram, if I'm on Reddit, if I'm on all these places, I have to actively work actually to comment whatever comes into my mind first. And this is a skill that I've had to develop and work on because I see something and I go, oh, that's really cool. But then I have to force myself to say, write a comment. This is really amazing. This is really cool. Way to go. Good luck. Whatever it might be. If I see something and I'm like, well, I don't think that makes any sense. I have to force myself and I have to work to actually start to put these things out there and start to share this. And so if you are able to embrace even a little bit of the unhinged marketing approach, it will help you in all of these ways because it's going to force you to start to reach out to people. This means that you can respond to comments. You can create content that encourages interaction like polls or other things. You can directly involve your audience in some way by asking them to respond. But the big goal here is to be able to spark conversations and foster a sense of community around the topic that you happen to be jumping into, like the trend or the topic or your brand. Now, off the top, I mentioned that this can go really right or this can go really wrong. Let's buckle up and hear a few stories where brands completely mess this up. So here are some ways it can go wrong. I'm going to go through this list really quick. One, you can offend your audience. If you're going to be spontaneous, if you're going to be unfiltered, if you're going to do that, chances are you're going to offend somebody. Everyone seems to be offended by something. There is no one who puts out anything where they do not offend someone. So frankly, I actually think that's a good thing. Like if you're saying something that is worthy of offending people, then you're saying something worthy of being paid attention to. You can risk coming across as inauthentic or trying too hard if your brand isn't genuinely humorous. Don't try to be funny if you're not funny. Don't try to be relatable if you're not relatable. Don't try to be spontaneous if you're not spontaneous. Now, this comes down to brand values, brand voice, how you want to be perceived. This really comes down to brand strategy, but you want to embrace this in a way that's true to you. And what are the costs of this? Well, you can damage your reputation. You can lose customers or turn off people, which usually means that you're actually gaining other people. So that can be kind of neutral. You can pick up a whole bunch of negative media coverage, which again could play the wrong way. But here are a few examples of where people did this not great. Let's look at Duolingo. Duolingo is the translation, the language learning app. Now, this app has for a long time, from a brand point of view, used unhinged marketing to inject itself into places where, frankly, it has no business being. But it's super quirky. It's super memorable. It's really done well on TikTok. Like, for example, its most successful clip on TikTok, which played on a riff of Dua Lipa, the artist, it got almost 40 million views. 40 million views almost on TikTok on a single video about an app to help you learn languages that was commenting and playing on Dua Lipa. Like, weird stuff, right? But here's where it can go wrong. The brand really took a hit because they pulled a clip of Katy Perry from like 2010 when she was winning Kids' Choice Awards. And at the time, she got covered in green slime. And Duolingo's app is brand color's green, and it's an owl. And they made a joke suggesting that Katy Perry getting covered in green slime was the owl ejaculating on her sexually. I hope I used proper words so you understand what I'm saying without being crude. But that seemed to cross the line for a lot of people. And they had to do a lot of work to apologize for that. They offended a lot of people because, like we said, it's cool that they got 40 million views with this Dua Lipa pop song, but then they go and do this. So when you are unfiltered, when you're over the edge, I guess sometimes you're going to miss the mark. I would never have been comfortable making that joke. I don't even know if I would have thought of that joke if I worked for them. But this is what they're doing. And so with the success also comes a few risks. Okay, so that was Duolingo. Let's look at another brand that maybe didn't do this so well. Burger King. They really attempted to get into unhinged marketing, but it backfired because they actually posted a tweet that was a sarcastic take on a campaign to promote scholarships for female employees. Now, what did they write? This is a quote. "Women belong in the kitchen." That didn't go so well. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why they thought that this would be funny. I don't know, I guess the 17 to 21-year-old boy culture, bro culture they're trying to appeal to. I don't really understand why they did this, but that didn't go over well. And as you can imagine, a ton of people interpreted the tweet as outdated, as misogynistic. It got a huge backlash. I'm looking at Washington Post coverage on this, and Forbes and Ad Age, and the fact that it went out on International Women's Day. Yikes! Let's not do that. Let's just agree between you and I that we're not going to make those kind of mistakes. Okay, so those are just two quick examples. But there are so many more out there. If you just quickly Google unhinged marketing mistakes, you will probably have as fun of an afternoon as I did. You might be asking, is this even worth the risk? Like, how would I do some kind of risk analysis or cost-benefit analysis to make sure that this is even something I want to approach or do? As I mentioned off the top, I don't think you need to go all the way into unhinged marketing, and most brands don't fully embrace this, but there are things we can learn from this. So here's a simple breakdown to help you work through whether this might be something you want to do or not. First, you want to define your goals. Like any campaign, like any tactical strategy, like anything that you want to invest time and money and resources into in your business, first, you have to define your goals. What does success look like for you? Are we just simply trying to increase brand visibility? Are we trying to have stronger customer relationships? Are we trying to improve our reputation amongst certain groups or certain audiences? Do we want to boost sales, right? This is How to Sell More podcast. And whatever your answer is to that question will influence the next series of steps and help you determine whether this is worth it or not. Step number 2, you want to understand your audience. Where are they? What platforms are they on? Do they like this stuff? Do they not like this stuff? What is their age? What is the sense of humor? You know, unhinged marketing is really about being unfiltered. But as we saw with a few of the examples where things went wrong, everyone has a different sense of what's appropriate, right? Of, you know, the old line, it's hard to define pornography, but you know it when you see it. It's hard to define what the filter should be, but you know what? When you get a backlash, I guess you've crossed that line. So you definitely want to be able to understand your audience. Number 3, you want to really look at calculating the total cost for this, because it's one thing to just send off a few tweets or do a few things yourself. And if that's how you want to approach it, cool. But if this is something you really want to jump on, you need a way to be able to track the trends that are currently popping on any of the platforms where your customers are. So how are you going to track the trends? How are you going to decide or filter which trends are those that may be most appropriate to you? How are you going to decide how to respond to that trend in a way that's authentic to your brand? And so going through those steps of being able to just keep track of what's happening on the platforms, identify and shortlist which ones you might want to respond to, determining the best way to respond, and then responding and staying on top of comments in real time. This takes some effort. This takes some time. So you have to be able to calculate a budget or a cost for this. And ideally, if you understand what your goal is, you'll be able to tie it back to your goal. Number 4, you want to be able to list out the potential benefits. You know, it's very easy for us to see risk, but there are often rewards, and sometimes there are unseen rewards. So what could the potential benefits be of being able to do this? In my experience, most business owners and those in sales and marketing like to stay a little bit more conservative. And that makes sense to me. You've done a lot of work. You're protecting your brand. You're protecting your reputation. It's taking you time to get here. But those who want to see immediate boosts and immediate changes, doing the same thing is going to garner the same results. And so being able to jump into something and being a little bit more comfortable with a small test or trying things out, and maybe you won't get a direct ROI right away, but there are huge benefits. Again, brand awareness, audience engagement, customer acquisition, just being able to step out from the crowd and get more attention and not be in the sea of all the competitors and be different and stand for something. I think these are all huge benefits. Now, step 5, you want to consider the risks. What are the downsides? What could go wrong? Now, it's going to be very easy for you to come up with a list of risks versus the list of benefits, but let's be honest, doing nothing is also a risk in any form of business. Standing still and doing nothing is a risk. So consider the risks. Consider the impact on brand or customer trust or complaints or negative feedback or what have you. And then ultimately, you want to be able to compare your costs and your benefits. So what are the costs? What are the potential benefit outcomes? What are the risks? Take a look at that. If you have a comfort level, last step, as always, make a decision, move forward or don't. Okay, so let's wrap things up with our 3-point roundup. Number 1, authenticity and relatability matter. We know that brands need to feel real. We know they need to be authentic. Unhinged Marketing, with its super candid and offbeat content, can help you humanize your brand and help you build more meaningful and relatable connections with the people you want to sell to. Point number 2, risk can lead to reward, but it's important to be careful. Unhinged Marketing can be high risk, high reward. And if you love playing that game, this might be right for you. And number 3, Unhinged Marketing is not a one-size-fits-all strategy. This approach will not be suitable for every brand. It will not work for every industry, and it will not work for every type of prospect you want to connect with. So it tends to resonate more with the younger, with the social media savvy audiences, better suited maybe for B2C rather than maybe a B2B marketing play. However, the core principles can be applied, and these principles of authenticity and creativity and boldness and engagement, all the things we've been talking about, can be applied to any marketing strategy in any business. So thank you for joining me for another episode of How to Sell More. One last thing for you. If you've made it this far into the podcast, you probably should subscribe. And while you're at it, head over to Instagram. Make sure that you follow us at Sales Loop Brand on Instagram. And why would you want to do that? Well, each week I share practical strategies and tips just like these to supercharge your business growth and boost sales. I'm Mark Drager. Thanks for listening.